God, he's going to go around the inside. He's going to send it. He's taking the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix on the last lap. Matt Turner takes the win in a remarkable race. We have teammates coming together. How devastating!
Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever it is in the world, and welcome to the iFormula League Formula 3 here, round number 8 from the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps here in Belgium. And today is looking like an absolutely amazing race here. 22 drivers we have currently in the server, and honestly, I reckon this race, much like we had yesterday, is going to be completely action-packed. I am joined here by Weston Epps, my co-commentator for this evening's race. Weston, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing phenomenal today. I'm really excited about this race. Our F2 race yesterday was absolutely fantastic, and today I expect nothing less from our F3 drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Spa, we know it all as very much a driver's circuit. Lots of people love this track, and for good reason. You know, you've got so many really cool corners at this track. Obviously, you talk a lot about Old Lucian Rally on the key corner. How brave are you to take that corner flat out every single time that you go through it, no matter how close you're following a car into it? But then also, a couple of other corners that people may not talk about. The Fania chicane, very technical, just technical part of the track that ends up in providing you a really good run through Stavelot into Blanchimont before the bus stop to end the lap. Very important corners to get right as well, because it can provide you with such a good opportunity to make a pass into turn number 1, which can then lead you to be able to just lead away, especially on low downforce setups, into out of Eau Rouge and Raidillon. But let's not talk about all that, because it's qualifying time at the moment. We're currently just getting a couple people sorted out on track at the moment. No one's really set any sort of representative laps. The first sort of laps is just coming through now. But let's talk about the championship standings as well. Interesting standings in general. The championship after the last couple of races has been really shaken up. I mean, yeah, we look at the likes of Antonio Jimenez. He was leading the championship by a significant margin at one point, and now all of a sudden that lead has evaporated to Jake Potts behind him, and then Victor Barris as well. All of them incredibly close, and I think that Jake Potts is obviously looking for a good result here.
Absolutely. Jake Potts has been really taking it to Drive X, who are looking to lead the championship this year, but Jake Potts has been bringing up the rear and closing that gap. Only, what is that, 3 points to the provisional leader right now in the driver standings. He's going to be looking for that win, and hopefully Antonio Jimenez doesn't get that safety car that ruined his race last week at Monza when he tried to overcut Potts, but the safety car just caught him and he wasn't able to open that gap. So the practice times looked really close today, so I'm very excited to see how this pulls out in qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'll do is I will read through the standings as it is, just while we're getting the first couple of laps through. So at the moment, the person leading your drivers' championship is Antonio Jimenez on 101 points, the only driver so far in triple digits for the F3 championship. Jake Potts leading behind quite close with 98 points, 3 points difference. So that would be the difference between a second and a third place. So keep that in mind as you're watching this race unfold. Victor Barris then behind him with 93 points, followed by Frederick Larsen with 72. And Frederick, you may have noticed, did pretty well yesterday. Had an unfortunate spin through Blanchimont, so is probably not trying to have the same sort of result that he had there. And obviously these cars don't have to worry about DRS, so that's maybe not as likely as it was in the F2 yesterday. Then In 5th, we do have Julie Redman with 65 points, followed by Brandon Walker there in 6th with 53 points. Joe Watts in 7th with 50 points. Tico Kriegsman in 8th with 41 points. James Miller in 9th with 37 points. And Danny O'Keefe rounds out the top 10 of the championship with 30 points. And in terms of the team standings, again, Drive X, as you mentioned, have been sort of running away with the teams a little bit. You're looking at Drive X with, I believe that's 194 points. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. It's quite small to see on our screens, but Lumos then with 130, I believe that's 135 or 136 points, but it's not as close as you would probably think that it would be. Especially considering you look at Drive X, yeah, they're doing very well in the driver standings, but these races, in the past couple of them at least, have been incredibly close between all of those drivers.
Yeah, and when we were interviewing Potts, I believe it was 2 or 3 races ago, he said that he's really looking forward to the second half of the season where all of his strong tracks are, and we've seen that pan out. I mean, Potts took his second win last week at Monza, and before that got another win at Coda. So he really has been coming alive and taking the challenge to Jimenez on the Drivers' Championship. And it's good to see. It's good to see that competition and splitting up the Drive X who were kind of dominating the league, but not anymore. They've got some healthy competition. Tico Kriegsman also bringing it up. He's not very close in the driver standings, but on the racetrack, he's been absolutely just like running after Drive X and giving them a real run for their money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tico had a pretty rough start to the season in comparison to a lot of these other drivers, but definitely when we look at his pace, he's definitely up there. He's one that we look at to maybe start to really push for any sort of last couple of like podium positions, maybe battling out there between the top sort of 3, maybe even like 5 drivers now as we sort of look towards Frederick Larson, James Miller, Victor Barrios, Antonio Jimenez, Jake Potts, again, as we mentioned. So many drivers within that top 5 that could win any race that we've got left. And then, obviously, at the moment, this championship, we're over halfway through now, right? This is the 8th round of a 14-round championship. So we only have a couple more races left. Like, now is the time where people are starting to think about, where am I in the championship order? Who am I fighting with? Who am I not fighting with? Who do I need to finish ahead of? And I think...
And right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm thinking that the likes of Antonio Jimenez, Tico Kriegsman, obviously, Kriegsman wants to finish as high up as he can, right? That's the goal of all of these drivers. You know, we want to get to P1 as much as we can. But if we can't do that, then... you know, we need to consider where are we in the drivers' championships. Like, who are we needing to beat on a week-by-week basis, and then maybe just play the smart game sometimes. Like, if you can battle with people who are further up in the championship, sure, go ahead, but don't race them as hard as you would, say, someone who is like 5 points ahead of you in the championship, for example. You know, don't risk your own race to instead have that sort of moment of glory that may end up with you having an incident somewhere down the line, right?
Absolutely. And right now, halfway through the championship, people are going to start feeling the pressure. Like you said, we're seeing the championship start to like quadrant off. Everybody's starting to see where they're going to end up in the championship and trying to maximize those points. But the pressure's on, especially for the front 5 drivers. I mean, everybody's fighting for the maximum amount of points, and nobody's making it easy on anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk a little bit about the qualifying session as it stands right now. Obviously, we do have 25-minute qualifying here, 9 of which has already gone by, so we've been chatting a lot about the championship so far, but let's focus on the session of the matter at hand. And at the moment, Drive X 1-2. Currently locking out the front row, James Miller coming in behind in 3rd place with Tico Kriegsman in 4th, Frederick Larson in 5th with his teammate in 6th, Brandon Walker 7th, Patrick Olsen in 8th, and then Brandon Walker's teammate Julie Redman in 9th as well. And then Cabe McClenny there in 10th. I believe Cabe is a new entrant to the F3 for this race, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Cabe is new in that number 05 car, so pretty impressive turnout if that's the case.
Yeah, he is new. He just signed up this week, and I think he's looking to make a name for himself. We'll see the legitimate pace during his during the race, but hopefully we can get a little more action going up front. Not that we need it. There's already so much action going on around this track, but Tico right now with 1 purple sector, but 2 purple sectors, not really moving up in the standings, still holding out that 4th position, but Potts went back up into 5th, so hopefully he's going to continue to push. We know he's got more qualifying pace, and from what I've seen, he is running a lower downforce setup, so as long as he can keep it going through Sector 2 and the beginning of Sector 3, he may be able to get pulled. But as we saw yesterday with the F2s, high downforce around here is incredibly strong.
Yeah.
You saw the high downforce and the low downforce fighting each other a lot, but once high downforce got out of like the second, maybe 8/10 range, they were able just to run away in Sector 2, and I'm really curious to see if that continues with these F3 who have less downforce in total.
Yeah, you would almost think that it doesn't necessarily matter as much, right? As we see a couple people sort of just improving their lap times. I think Victor Barris currently in Sector 1 and with the purple, but not improving much else beyond that. But it is one thing to consider, obviously. You know, where do you set your car up for around Spa, right? It's a very long circuit, one of the longest we have on the calendar, and, you know, you can either set the car up for very, very quick in the straights, so in Sector 1 and Sector 3, you're very, very good. But in Sector 2, you're losing so much pace in comparison to everyone else as Victor Barris just goes ahead and shows me that while he was down, it wasn't quite down enough, and he's now into that 211 flat. I'm wondering now, are we going to see a 210 here for the qualifying pace? Because if so, I think whoever gets into the 210, I don't think anyone else is going to be able to touch them.
Yeah, Barris already with a 211 and everyone else is 2/10 behind. Even more, Potts 6/10 behind. But we're almost about halfway through qualifying, so there's still plenty of pace for these drivers to pull out. But it is kind of a hot track, 94 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a lot of struggling, especially if you're on a low downforce setup. There's going to be a lot of struggling that you're going to have to deal with to get that time. But I think you're correct. Whoever gets that 210 is going to be the mark. But like I said, I think it's this high downforce. I think the high downforce just gives so much time in the second sector, if you can extract that you can just make up for all the loss that you get on the straight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to try and go on board there with Jake Potts, as I think Jake was starting a lap, but ends up aborting that one. I just wanted to try and see if I can get an onboard with a driver who's just starting their lap and just take you through what it's like in the eyes of these drivers, because in these F3 cars, obviously it's a lot different from F2. The pace difference is certainly one to note. I mean, we're looking at 211s, maybe a 210 qualifying pace. So far, no one's doing it, but a couple people trying their best. You know, Roland's just improved to 12.9. Still, maybe not quite as close as he'd like to be to everyone else ahead of him, but it's an improvement nonetheless. And, you know, if you're improving in quali, you're at least going in the right direction. And then Victor Barris, I'm sure, is going to try his best to improve as much as he can. Currently, he is slightly up in Sector 2, and I believe coming through Sector 4, we may see another improvement. No, he is slightly down. I think it's not by much, though, so if he nails the bus stop here, he does have a bit of traffic. We'll see whether or not he can improve, and if he can, I reckon this will be a 210. So let's see as he comes across the line. Oh, 211.030. How close does he want to get?
He's pushing that to the absolute maximum. You saw his rear end start to get a little happy coming through the bus stop. He's really pushing. He wants to make that statement.
But here is a driver currently on a flying lap, James Malaire. So we'll go on board with him as he just goes through the first corner here of Stavlo, and as he goes up the hill, Eau Rouge and Radion, very, very cool corner. You want to be as flat out as you can, try and use as little of the curb as possible, because those curbs are lethal. And we'll see whether or not he's going to be improving at all, as Patrick Olsen does just go purple in the Sector 4 there. So nice improvement there from Patrick, and we may see him actually jump up the times. But keeping on board with James Malaire, currently down in Sector 1. We're going through Sector 2. We'll see whether or not he does change that. And this section of the circuit is so good for your high downforce cars. If you're on a low downforce setup, you can see the way that the car's just skating across the track through every part of the corner and through Bruxelles here. You want to try and make sure that the car doesn't understeer as much, and on a high downforce setup, it's not so difficult to do. But on these low downforce setups, you put that power down and the car just wants to snap on you. Same here through Purn. You hear just that slight little lift, maybe a bit of brake, and I think that was an invalid lap there as he's just gone slightly too wide on the outside of the circuit, just gone off, and I believe he is now just lifting, and he's going to abort this lap. But we'll see. He may potentially continue it, but I think, no, he's calling it off this lap. He's just going to reset and go again next lap, cool down those tires a bit, and see if he can get another one in.
Yeah, that's the correct decision right there. Once you invalidate a lap, you don't want to keep pushing. You want to keep as much life in those tires as possible. But Frederick Larson going up into 4th, out-qualifying Kriesman and Potts. He's definitely coming up and setting a name for himself. Good job to Larson. Let's see if he can improve and get past Malaire. He's only 2/10 behind, so he is within range, but he's really got to push it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things, right, that when you're trying to push in a qualifying session, you're giving it everything you can. You're trying to go 110%, 120%, and just give everything that the car has to give. And every time we see people setting green sectors or even purple sectors, we know that they're trying to get absolutely everything out of that setup that they possibly can. Currently, Brandon Walker trying to improve, McClenny trying to improve as well, Patrick Olsen trying to improve, Tico Kriegsman trying to improve, and I think Walker did just improve there, up now into 7th place, so ahead of his teammate Julie Redman, and doing a 2:11.944, so within that 1 second range now of Victor Barris, as we see James Malaire deciding that he's going to be a lawnmower for a bit as he goes onto the side of the track there and calls that lap off again.
Well, that is a tactic. You are able, unless you get that off track, you are able to put a tire into the grass and attempt to cool it off for a better run into Lacombe. So maybe that's what he was trying to do and just went too far and just got that off track, which is a shame. But that is a valid strat. You are able to do that. It may be frowned upon by the community, but it's not policed by iRacing. So all's fair in love and racing.
Indeed, but Herbert, I just wanted to mention, has improved his times and actually now put himself quite close to Jake Potts as well. So again, being 8/10 off of the leader and then only a 10th off the guy ahead of you, you're probably now in a situation where you kind of want to risk it and go again, right? You want to try and find that time and see if you can gain that extra position. And the thing is if it wasn't a very good lap from him, he's probably thinking, yo, I've got a 10th in this, like I can get 6th, maybe even 5th. If I nail this lap, I can get up there with the big boys and start fighting, and especially if I nail the start, who knows, I could be battling Drive X into the first corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the first 10 being only a second apart in qualifying, that's definitely there. There's not a large gap in this field. Only a 3-second gap between the whole field. And then, like I said, the top 10, only a second. So any sort of marginal improvement that you can make can easily gain you a position. But you just have to stick with it and be brave and hit the brakes a little later, a little harder, and then release them a little early. And then, as the great Fittipaldi said, turn your steering wheel as little as possible to go as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a saying that works, you know, we see it a lot, and I've just seen that Walker might have just improved his lap time, although potentially had it invalidated, why we're not seeing it pop up. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that the less strain you can give on your tires, the better, right? So if you are turning too much, then you're going to lose speed because the tires are going to start scrubbing, and then that's where you lose your 10ths of a second as opposed to like your big chunks of time that can be made up under braking. The smaller margins that you're looking for, like these 1/10, maybe even shorter than that, like for example the gap between Jimenez and Malaire, that could have just been, oh, I didn't turn as much through Eau Rouge, I didn't turn as much through Radion, you know, like that could be the difference that puts Malaire up into 2nd place. And just as I say that, Darius is improving his lap times, potentially on for a lap time that may even put him 15th, maybe 14th, but I believe it could have been invalid because we're not seeing any massive improvement coming from him. But Julie Redman, near the end of her lap, looking to also improve, but I believe she's just come into the pits, so maybe was already invalid and decides to get a new fresh set of rubber before coming back out. And Jimenez improves his lap time and goes within a 1/10 of a second of his teammate, 2:11.119. I mentioned it before. If anyone here can get within that 2:10, I think that's it, right? They've got pole.
Absolutely, yeah. But I would keep an eye on Walker and Redmond throughout the race. I mean, they have been kind of the underdogs, kind of in midfield during qualifying as Barris sets a purple first sector. But during the race, they're really able to keep up pace, and that gave Julie Redmond 2 podiums. So I wouldn't count them out just yet, being in 8th and 9th. I would definitely keep my eye on them. But we'll see how Barris finishes off this lap and see if he can finally break into the 2:10s and make that statement that they've been watching drivers trying to make. Just assert that dominance and make everybody else think, oh, maybe I can't get a 2:10, or have them push too hard trying to get that 2:10. But we'll see. We'll see how it comes up right now as he goes through the bus stop, taking that left, trying to get on the power as early as possible, use all of that runoff. Coming across the line.
Is it going to be an improvement? And it is! He jumps into the 2:10.9. That is a statement right there from Barris. I think now you're looking at Barris's time. That's been seen by everyone in the session now, right? Like, everyone knows now where they were just a second ago. I was maybe like 9/10 off. Now you're 1.1 seconds off and going, what just happened? Like, where do I find that time? It seemed like Barris just absolutely nails the first sector. And in comparison to his teammate, I'm looking at the sector times now. So on Antonio Jimenez's lap, so this lap, he's only he's 0.1 second off in the first sector alone, which is T1 to the exit of Eau Rouge and Radion. Like, a 1/10 there. Where do you find that, right? Like, he's probably already on the limit of grip. Where's that 1/10? Where did that come from?
It's just getting on the power it's just getting on the power as early as possible, because even if you miss your acceleration point by 1/10, that's going to lose you time all the way down the straight. So he's just stomping on the throttle as Barris sets another purple first sector. He has so much faith in this car, and it's looking like the low downforce is really playing into the hands of these F3 drivers, as he's not setting purple or even personal bests second sector. That low downforce seems to be the way to go, as long as you can just hold it in the second and third sectors. That seems to be the play from DriveX.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what he can do, as Antonio Jimenez also sets a purple in Sector 1. I'm looking at that on my timing screens, and this could be a battle here for the lead of just qualifying in general. Then we're going to see whether or not Victor Barris can improve. It's looking like he's lost time in Sector 2, 3, and 4, but we'll see if he can find it through the bus stop. The bus stop chicane last time may not have been as clean as he would have liked, so this one looks a lot more tidy. Let's see if he can improve at all, and unfortunately not. It is a 2:11.064, which was still incredibly close to the original time that he had before setting that 2:10, so he's got consistency running at this ridiculous pace.
Absolutely, and with only 1:30 left. This is the last lap for these guys. Anybody else can pull out a 2:10 and take pole. They have to do it right now. This is your last lap, and I'm sure the pressure is just excruciating for these guys as we see Jimenez taking that right turn, going into the last sector. Maybe he can improve. We'll see.
Well, he did set a purple through Sector 1, so potentially there could be an improvement here. And this is why I wanted to get on board with him, is just to see what he's doing for the rest of the lap, see where he is in Sectors 2, 3, and 4. I think, again, he's had a similar story to Barris. Sets purple in Sector 1, but through Sectors 2, 3, and 4 just doesn't quite have it. And, he clips the curb on the bus stop there. That's going to slow him down a little bit, maybe not the exit that he wanted. And that's going to cost him all that time, I think, that he may have found in turn number 1. We're going to see what that time is as he goes across the line. That's a 2:11.130, so yeah. I imagine that would have been in the bus stop, and otherwise that probably could have been a low 2:11 at least, like maybe a flat.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but he just took that too sharp. You don't want to take that bus stop too sharp, because there is a ridge, not only because of the sausage curve, but that ridge really unsettles the car, and you're not able to get good traction and good acceleration out of that if you hit that ridge too deep. You really want to stay off the curves as much as possible in that bus stop on entry. But with qualifying, the checkered being shown, whoever's on the lap right now is their last lap. Victor Barris, no personal best just yet, no purple sectors, as well as Tico Kriegsman. Frederick Larson sets a new personal best, first sector, but I think this is going to be our grid unless somebody's really starting to push right now.
Yeah, and I think the only person that seems to be massively improving on his times, I think, is currently Frederick Larson. We saw him in the first sector, he's gone green. It's not quite close enough to where he would be challenging the guys up top. And I'm looking at the sector times, and honestly, I think that's where most of Frederick Larson's time is coming from. Just not able to get that speed through Sector 1. But then he also seems to be a little bit quicker through Sectors 2, 3, and 4. But just as I say that, Frederick Larson does, I believe, set another lap. Although, no, that would have been an out lap. So I think he was trying to get one more lap in, and just somewhere just didn't quite work out the timing of that, and that'll be him over. And Antonio Jimenez is not really improving massively. I mean, sectors 2, 3, green, but again, it's not much of a difference, so we're going to keep on board with Jimenez, and this is the only guy now who's going to be able to challenge for your pole position, as we're going to see Antonio Jimenez come into the bus stop chicane. Is he able to get it right this time? As he takes that left-hand corner, avoids the sausage curb, nice and easy, takes the left-hander of that, runs as far wide as he can. Did he improve enough? And he did get it right on the line. 210.880 from Antonio Jimenez with 0 purple sectors, by the way. He didn't go purple in any sector on that lap.
Wow, that's just absolutely fantastic to see. There is no love lost between Jimenez and Barris. They are battling tooth and nail and almost a 10th above the 210. And we thought that the 210.9 was just about as fast as anybody could go. And Jimenez comes along and just nails that last sector and just takes it home. Congratulations to Jimenez. What a phenomenal lap.
Yeah, I mean, I said he wasn't improving by much, but it must have been a lot more than what I thought, because his previous lap was like a low 211, I think. It was a 211.1, 211.2, I think. And then to improve by that much at the end, I mean, that is nerves right there, right? Like, you're on your final lap, you know this is a do-or-die lap. I can get ahead of my teammate here if I nail it. And nail it, he did. And wow, I mean, that is just absolutely incredible from Antonio, right at the last minute of the lap. You know, the last sector is where it came down to. He nailed the bus stop more than he did the previous lap, and that puts him ahead by 0.02 of a second. So it's not even like it's like a massive difference. Like 0.02 of a second is probably as close as you're gonna get to it.
Yeah, and I believe he got that all through the bus stop and probably just getting a better line, getting able to get on the accelerator a little earlier. That's all it takes. It only takes that 1 microsecond decision. That's the difference between pole and second place. And fortunately, Jimenez got it.
Yeah, I mean, that in terms of an action-packed qualifying session, I mean, that's one that's going to go down there, I think, as one of the best qualifying sessions we've had for a while. Because that came down to literally the final corner. We'll take a look at the results here for the qualifying session. We'll get you your top 15. Just to take a look at the grid and just see where everyone's lining up. And it is Drive X locking out the front row. Antonio Jimenez, as we mentioned, right there on the final lap, doing a 210.8, with Victor Barris doing a 210.9, and being very, very close to his teammate, but not quite close enough. James Miller there in third for the Lumos eMotorsports team, only 0.3 off, which it sounds like a much bigger margin when you consider how close Barris and Jimenez were. That 0.3 gap seems almost like double in terms of just distance behind. Keep in mind, though, the actual grip positions, he's not going to start that far back. You know, he's going to look to maybe go into turn 1 and make a move on Victor Barris if Barris isn't careful. Barris is going to start on the outside for turn 1, remember, so that's something to maybe keep an eye on. And then Frederick Larson as well. You know, maybe not the pace that he was looking for, 6/10 off the Drive X team, you know, it's still not massively far, but it's one of those that you now look at that and you go, okay, I've got a bit more pace in me, maybe race pace, they'll ease off a bit, and that's where I can show my speed, is in that race situation. And Frederick Larsen's obviously going to try and make as much moves as he can to finally get himself on the podium as well here in the F3 in the IFL. And then Tico Kriegsmann is in 5th position for that Turning Point Racing team, the fastest for that team, with being 7/10 off of Antonio Jimenez's time. Then we move on down to Jake Potts, the second of the Lumos E Motorsports team, 8/10 off of Jimenez, with Dominic Herbert there in 7th for the Pure Racing opposition team. And we've got Brendan Walker there in 8th position, followed by his teammate Julie Redman in 9th. Then we've got Sean Roberts, who is the Pure Racing opposition teammate of Dominic Herbert, in 10th, followed off by Danny O'Keefe, who is Frederick Larsen's teammate there in 11th. Patrick Olsen, the highest of the High Gear Racing team cars, in 12th, followed off by Cade McClenny there in 13th, Jackson Carr in 14th, and then Emmanuel Gibano in 15th for VPG Sim. And again, really close qualifying session.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, the strategy going down the straights. That's where this race is going to be won. Personally, I think Larson and Malaire have the edge here. I mean, unless Jimenez and Barris run a block and just take up as much of the track as possible going down the straight, I think Malaire and Larson really have a good run. If they can just get a good exit coming out of T1 and then just following Jimenez and Barris as close as possible and getting ahead, and then I think that's where it's going to be won or lost, is around that first turn. But we'll see about the strategies from Jimenez and Barris and whether they're willing to work together, or if they're going to be fighting tooth and nail, because even though they're on the same team, they want that driver's championship just as bad as the other. And while Jimenez is in the lead, I think Barris wants to take it to him. I mean, apparently they're fighting each other very closely. Only 200ths off a qualifying lap. There's going to be no love lost between these two. But if they're smart, they're going to run a block going down the straight and try and keep these guys behind that just are going to be able to stay so close on their slipstream. And if they're able to run away with that, I think it's going to be a close race.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you mentioned, like, we've seen it before with the Drive X guys and how they really like to battle each other. Like, they tend to not have that sort of situation where, we're just, we're going to work together, and like Jimenez or Barris, whoever's ahead in the championship, is just going to go ahead and do their thing. And then, like, the other one will come through later and we'll just run 1-2 the entire race. Like, no, those two fight. If they're close enough on track, they will be there together right until the very end. As I will say, by the way, just going off topic a little bit, I mean, what a great job for these cameras. Just look at these scenic views. They're absolutely incredible. We absolutely love these cameras here in the IFL. And we give a massive thank you to Track Cams for Gourmet for providing those to us. And again, our sponsors, Butt Kicker TD Designs as well. Butt Kicker providing absolutely, I mean, they're providing us rewards for the championship, right? So that's really cool. We absolutely love Butt Kicker around here. And hey, we can't wait to hopefully work with more in the future. I mean, it's gonna be really cool. And if you want to get involved with the IFL, we've got all the links down below as well in the description. So make sure you follow along, you join us, because it's going to be absolutely incredible. And as we get gridding here, we will take a look at our pole position man, Antonio Jimenez, with a last lap of dreams near enough. Like, it was an incredible final lap here to set him on pole position, followed off by his teammate in second, Victor Barris. And I am very excited for this one, as we have all the drivers gridded up and ready to go. 22 laps here from the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps here in Belgium. Gibano did miss the start, as we've got all 5 lights on the gantry, and we are green here in Belgium for the Belgian Grand Prix, and it looks like it was a good start. Everyone getting off the line really well. Antonio Jimenez taking a really good start. James Mallet doing a really good job to get up the inside there of Victor Barris into T1, but Victor Barris is fighting back, and I wonder, are they going to go side by side through Old Rouge and Radion? It looks like behind a couple of other drivers are trying to do it. Tico Kriegsman, Frederick Larson battling further behind. Dominic Herbert, Jake Potts, Julie Redman, everyone is going absolutely crazy here down the Kemmel Straight, side by side by side by side, and then maybe even going to make it 3 wide into the Lecombe chicane. And is anyone going to give anybody room? Frederick Larson's currently leading ahead of Tico Kriegsman, who just manages to get by Jake Potts, who just manages to get in front of Julie Redman, and what a start from Julie Redman, getting 2 on the opening lap here. Dominic Herbert losing a position behind her, and then just as I say that, Julie Redman looked like she was going to try and make a move up the inside of Jake Potts. Jake doing a really good job to defend, with the difference there between the high downforce and low downforce packages, and we're going to see whether or not Jake Potts is going to be able to defend from a very charging Julie Redman. Julie knows that she can go a bit later on the brakes here than the car in front, and is she going to be able to make that move on the inside? We saw from yesterday, if you were watching the F2, we saw Lewis Archer do this all day yesterday, but it doesn't look like she was committing necessarily, and that's going to allow her to get attacked by Dominic Herbert as well behind. Dominic looking to maybe try and make this move into Stavlo, but nothing doing just yet, just having to sit back a little bit further, as Cape McClenny is also now up into 9th position, getting 4 places off the start. So really good job from him. And yeah, I mean, new to the championship, and he's already making a massive name for himself here, as going now down into Blanchimont, following each other as close as you dare. And this is where you'll see the difference between the high downforce and the low downforce package. Jake Potts, look at the gap he's made on the cars behind, who are all running high downforce. Julie Redmond's high downforce. Dominic is high downforce. Cabe, who we're on board with right now, also high downforce setups, and all of them are able to just keep close to each other, but not quite close enough to Jake Potts in this sector.
Fantastic first lap. Julie Redmond, like I said, she's on a charge. Their qualifying pace isn't there, but their race pace is second to none. But kind of a tame first lap. We tried to see Lair trying to get into that slipstream, but Jimenez just gave Barris his slip, trying to work together, and he gave Malaire just nothing, and was able to defend down the straight, and just wasn't able to get Barris or Jimenez going into the chicane. So we'll see as they're going down the straight. But look at the rear wings compared to Potts and Redmond. They're completely different. Jake Potts is running barely any rear wing. But like we were saying yesterday, like you were just saying, the high downforce is so superior in the second sector, but only if you're able to keep that gap or open up a large enough gap, maybe around 1 second, to the low downforce. Otherwise, they're just going to pass you right back on the straight. You really have to pick your move where you're going to go and where you can maximize it. As Julie Redmond's looking at move on the inside of Pouan, does she send it? Is she? Oh, yeah, Jake Potts with the lower downforce hanging around the outside.
Yeah, that's it. Move done. I mean, that was very similar to how we saw Lewis Archer do it from yesterday's race. Very similar moves. All these high downforce guys are going to look up the inside of Pouan, and if you make them go around the outside, guess what? They're still going to go there. They're still not going to let you have any space. But one thing that I want to get back on board with is this battle between Jake Potts and James Malaire. Antonio Jimenez and James Malaire, as the Lumosy Motorsports car of James Malaire is currently on the back of Antonio Jimenez, and if they're not careful, Antonio Jimenez is going to play rear gunner to Victor Barris. I think that pass came down the Kemmel Straight as James Malaire goes very aggressive to the inside, locking up the brakes very close. Surprised they didn't make contact, and Antonio Jimenez manages to get the run on the outside, going now down the straight, start-finish straight here into turn number 1. Is James Malaire going to be able to make it up the inside? But no, just a little bit too far back. If he keeps close enough though, through Eau Rouge, through Radion, we're going to stay on board with him on this roll bar cam and see whether or not he can make that move into the Lecombe chicane as well, down the Kemmel. So we're going to see James Malaire, how close are you wanting to follow? Are you going to lift, my man? And it doesn't look like he does. So he's now just got all that slipstream, all that speed, that overspeed, because they're both running very similar style of setups. James Malaire trying to look left, trying to look right, sells him a dummy and a bit, and both of them make contact, and that's Antonio Jimenez up there into the wall, and he manages to save it just about, but that's going to allow Tico Kriegsman now to come straight past him. I'm not sure if there was contact between the two of them, but it looked like they were very, very close going into that corner, and then all of a sudden we just see Antonio Jimenez just unfortunately having a little bit of a spin, and that's going to allow Frederick Larson past as well.
Wow, that's incredibly unfortunate from Jimenez. It didn't look like they made very much contact. Maybe it was a netcode issue, but whatever the case, Jimenez has just dropped like a rock, and all of that gap that him and Barris made before is just gone, and now he's in the thick of it, and he's on that low downforce setup, and Julie Redmond looking up the behind him with that high downforce setup. Is she going to be able to open that gap on him? But Jimenez is just taking the battle to her, trying. It's Julie Redmond spins. Oh no. What a shame on the high downforce. That was her chance. Oh, you know she's kicking herself as she just falls through. What a shame.
Yeah, and that's going to put her now down into unlucky position 13, but hopefully not unlucky for her as she tries to get her way back through the field. She knows she has the pace ahead of everyone else, so now we're just going to keep an eye and see whether or not that battle continues on. But further up the road here, the battle for P10, the last points paying position, Darius currently fighting with Patrick Olsen, and they are both trying to fight as hard as they can, both on the low downforce setup, so it's coming down to a drag race here into the bus stop chicane. Darius looks up the inside in that number 23 car, makes the move work, and my god, that was easy. It looked like for Darius on the braking. It looked like he had so much more confidence, and he just took that inside line and away he's gone. But he's gonna have to be careful because Patrick is gonna try and look up the inside, and there was a big look up there from Darius, and that's going to allow Patrick Olsen to come around the outside of him into turn number 1, and then on the exit of turn number 1. But is this too little too late? Because Darius will now have the slipstream through Eau Rouge, through Radion, and then also down the Kemmel Straight, so Darius is going to come all the way back on him once again. And just as I say that, further up the field, you do have a battle there between Antonio Jimenez and Frederick Larson, and I think that was Jimenez just getting past. And then again, further up the field, we've got just action everywhere as Darius goes up the inside of Lecom. Is he going to make it stick around the outside of the second part? Not able to do anything just yet, and he's going to have to just sit back now in this tight and twisty section. Doesn't quite have the high downforce setup to really let him go through. So I think Darius is now just going to be watching in his mirrors and watching for Julie Redmond behind, who is on that high downforce setup. And we're going to see maybe that Julie can make some sort of move, make something work, especially into Puon. And we're going to watch now on board with Darius as Julie Redmond tries to look around the outside, but nothing doing just yet. Darius placing his car very well to just avoid any sort of last minute move from Julie, but she does look to the inside anyway, very late admittedly, but Darius gives her the room and then manages to just make it stick, keeps to his line, and just unfortunately nothing doing just yet. Julie's trying to look everywhere she can to make this move work, but Darius is just having none of it. And then you watch what happens here on the straight, Weston. You watch what happens coming out of Stavlo. Watch that gap start to just grow. Even though Julie's in the slipstream, I reckon Darius is still going to pull away here.
Yeah, it's still that battle between low downforce and high downforce. If you're not able to get that move done by the end of the Kimmel Straight, or even the middle part of Sector 2, you're not going to pass somebody with lower downforce than you. She was almost a tenth behind him, and look at him just opening that gap, no regard, as Julie's becoming under pressure. Oh, it just goes so wide.
John Rowland as well, who had a little bit of an incident there and just unfortunately has to take the escape road, almost hit into the back of Julie. I was a bit worried that maybe there was going to be some contact involved there, but thankfully nothing doing just yet. And what it means is we now have a 3-car battle here for 9th position. 10th position, I should say. And then further up ahead of them, there's Brandon Walker and Danny O'Keefe battling for P8. Tico Kriegsman within a second currently of the car ahead of him, so that's going to be nice for him to see at the very least. Maybe even a battle brewing up further up the field. So if we keep on board here, I don't think any move is maybe going to be made. Potentially Darius is going to look around the outside here of Patrick Olsen, but nothing doing. And Darius is once again now going to have to try and hope that as they go incredibly close, and I believe there was even contact made between the front wing and the rear wing, and Julie Redmond's looking to try and maybe make it 3 wide. Very wisely backs out at the last second, because you don't want to be making it 3 wide there, Julie, but she is going to take that place from Patrick Olsen, who did just lose 2 positions in the space of sort of 2 corners, and now Julie's got the overspeed coming out of Speaker's corner. Is she going to be able to make anything work? She's not going to be able to get anywhere so far, but she's going to go around the outside of the second part of Puon, and still nothing doing. Goes for the undercut here, maybe a little bit of a switcheroo, as she now goes into the Piff Paff chicane, or as I called it yesterday, the flip flap chicane. And again, very, very close between them, and I swear, Julie's trying everything she can, but just can't quite find her way past, and every time she gets close enough, it's almost like Darius just sort of slams that door back in her face and says, no, you're not getting past me yet. You have to work for it if you want to get past me for this P10.
Yeah, but that was a phenomenal move from Julie Redmond, just following Darius on the inside of Brushels. Good move, smart move, but she's just not able to get past Darius on that lower downforce, as Patrick Olsen is starting to look back up the inside, but Julie just shuts that door. It's all kicking off here as she locks up and goes wide into the bus stop and spins.
That's
Oh
gonna be
no!
a huge crash between Julie Redmond and Patrick Olsen, and she's just going all the way back on track. Julie, what are you doing? Just stop! Please! There seems to be just so many cars that were coming back across track. I thought we were going to see an even bigger pile up there between maybe 2 or 3 more cars. And there is a safety car out now, because that could have been very dangerous. The car that Julie collided with was also on her rear wing. So not only was she bringing herself across the track, trying to get across the, trying to get off the racing line, smart idea, but she also had another car in tow, so she almost blocked the entire exit of the bus stop by doing that.
Oh my gosh, that was so close. Julie is just not comfortable under braking. We saw her spin coming out of the, as you coined, the flip-flap chicane. She spun there, spun coming out of the bus stop chicane. She's just not confident under acceleration, which is so strange with that high downforce setup.
Yeah, I mean, you would think with the high downforce setup, maybe you're going to be at least close enough to where you can relax a bit, and you don't have to push as hard, because, or you don't have to be as smooth with your inputs. But even still, like, these cars will bite you if you're not careful, and I think that's just what we saw. Under braking, if you get that brake just a little bit too wrong and then you lock up, unfortunately, it's just going to cause all sorts of issues, and then you hit that sausage curb on the inside of the final part of the bus stop, and you end up spinning around, and then another car's collecting you, and then you're trying to, you don't know what's going on in that situation, right, as a driver, so you're trying to get off the racing line. But in that situation, I think if you're Julie, you just have to kind of just sit back and just be like, okay, I'm just going to stay where I am. I'm predictable where I am. If I just stay here, every other driver can then go around me, and that's fine. Like, they know that there's going to be a car on the outside, and spotters are going to call for you in that situation, right? If you're in iRacing, the spotters are going to call for you that there's a car stopped on the outside of the bus stop, that you need to go to the inside line, and you need to stay there, because that's where you will avoid the accident. So I was surprised that we didn't get more chaos there than we saw.
Yeah, that was incredibly lucky, but let's just take a minute and look at Jimenez finally starting able to close up the gap and coming in 4th. He's going to be right behind Kriegsman and Malaire. I wonder if he's going to be able to make up for the contact earlier on in the race. This is a godsend to Jimenez, being able to close up that gap, but it's also a godsend to Malaire. He's going to be right on the back of Barris, and he's going to get a second shot down this straight. But they're both running low downforce, as it seems, so it's going to be very close. He's really got to get that exit off of the bus stop chicane and coming out of the first turn. He's got to get that right in order to get that run down to the Kimmel Straight, and he wants to stay in that slipstream, so Tico and Jimenez aren't able to catch him, but it is all kicking off.
So many cars as well, as I think I saw just one car just stack it into the wall there. I think that was Stuart Gibbons coming up through old Rouge and Radion and just found himself in the wall, so he's going to have to do Unfortunate reverse there, Stuart. You think you got off the camera, mate? No, unfortunately, we did see
Oh.
that. That is going to be maybe his race even over. That's a very unfortunate incident. But I saw there was a load of people that just sort of stopped on the top of Eau Rouge and Radion and were just trying to back up because of where the safety car was. And I think that caught a few people off guard. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few people now with damage as well, potentially even pitting. I know Julie Redman had to pit, obviously, with her damage, and then we may have seen a couple of other people pit as well. So Nicholas Marshall, I believe, has indeed started to pit. And then Emmanuel as well in 13th has already done his pit stop. So potentially we could see Emmanuel go all the way to the end here. I think now is sort of the time where you could make it to the end with the rest of the tank.
Yeah, I think right now it's just starting to open. I still think it's a little too early to pit. But if the safety car, we don't know if there's going to be another safety car. So do you risk that light fuel but more worn tires under the safety car? We lose arguably more positions but less time under the safety car. Especially if everybody else decides to pit during the race, you're just going to have tons of clean air. But yeah, these drivers should be calling out when they're checking up on the safety car. So flying corners like Eau Rouge don't catch drivers out. Fortunate for Gibbons, who just got caught out, Constantina effect, and just ran it into the wall. But this restart is going to be so important to these drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're going to see Victor Barris lead them away, which is a position I think Victor Barris has definitely had a few times. I think we've seen him lead off the restarts a couple times, so we'll see sort of what his strategy is. And the guys behind him, James Miller, low downforce, Tico Kriegsman, high downforce. So watch for Tico Kriegsman, maybe not to be good at the start, but through Sector 2, maybe he can put pressure on James Miller and then force himself up into P2. I mean, if he keeps close enough through turn 1, through Eau Rouge Radion, down the straight into the Lecombe chicane, maybe from there on, that's where his car will start to shine and where he's going to start really finding time. So I'm sure he's looking at the rear wing levels of James Miller and Victor Barris ahead of him and going, I need to stay close down the straight here. Like, I need to get these corners right every single time, and I need to go as early as I possibly can, because this is what it's going to come down to, I think, for someone like Tico, when Antonio Jimenez as well is on the low downforce. And then Frederick Larson, I think I saw on his rear wing, actually, looked almost like it was a bit of a almost looked like he was running a bit different of a downforce config from everyone else. I think it was like almost like a hybrid between the two of them. I'm trying to see if I can find a camera here to maybe make a note of that, as it seems like, yeah, if you look at his rear wing, it's not that flat plank that we see on a low downforce package. So maybe he's taken the high downforce package but running the lowest wing that he could possibly run. Because if you compare that to the likes of the car behind him, who, again, there's so many people coming into the pit stops right now. Victor Barris, James Miller, Tico Kriegsman, Antonio Jimenez, Frederick Larson, Jake Potts, Cabe McClenny, Danny O'Keefe, Darius, John Rowland, Emmanuel, Jackson, Frankie, Arturo, Patrick, Sean, Stewart, all of them, all in the pit lane. There's a party up in here right now.
Oh, this is going to be very interesting on exit. Who's going to be able to get that better runoff out of their pit box? But for a second, let's just take a minute and see. Potts isn't really able to make moves anywhere. Is he able to gain some positions in the pit lane? As we see Walker go up into first, with Herbert in third and Barris sticking in fourth. This is going to be a very interesting restart. Everybody on fresh tires, full fuel.
Tico got jumped. I think Tico got jumped by a few people. I want to say Nick Marshall got out ahead. Julie Redman, I'm not sure where Julie should be right now, but she's seeming to drop back and try and settle in between a few people, so I'm not sure whether or not there's miscommunication going on between herself and Nick, but yeah, I mean, Tico has now put himself in a position where he's behind. Like, he got jumped by Julie and Nick, who haven't pit yet, and yet James Miller and Victor Barris manages to get out just ahead. And I think if you're Tico Kriegsman right now, you're thinking, damn, that's really not what I wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a godsend for Malera. He doesn't have to really worry about a lot of pressure from those that pitted from behind. He can just focus on Barris and just keep moving forward. As Jimenez is down in 12th, unfortunately. And so, Potts in 10th, Larson in 9th, and Kriegsman down in 8th.
Do you want to know who's our biggest gainer right now so far this race? We're looking at Vitautus, who's currently in second, has gained 17 positions so far this race. He's gained 17 off the start. He started in 19th, he's now second. Admittedly, he still needs to pit, but even still, that is incredible. Although, someone who has gained positions, and it's a meaningful gain, Nicholas Marshall, he's gained 15 positions in this race so far. 15! And he's currently 7th and has pit. So if Nicholas can actually keep that pace, if he can keep his car where it is currently, and he can carry the fuel to the end, we're going to see Nicholas in a position where he could potentially take home maybe even P5.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. But the safety car lights are out. Walker leading the pack. I wonder if he's going to send it out of the bus stop or if he's going to back him up all the way to the line. Personally, I think he should just take it right out of that bus stop and just get the jump on everybody. Because he does seem to have a lower downforce. Not quite low downforce, but much like Larson, who kind of had the hybrid medium downforce. I think he should just get the run and just open up that gap.
Package. Maybe just a slightly higher wing. I think he's
you're
running
correct
low
on that.
downforce with just a slight higher wing. Like, if you compare that to, as we mentioned before, with Frederick Larson, if you look at Frederick Larson, look at that rear wing in comparison to everyone else who's behind him. Like, immediately, you can see from here, Frederick Larson and Jake Potts. Jake Potts' rear wing, one flat plank. Frederick, he's got those two. So he's possibly running the lowest downforce you can run, but in the high downforce configuration. Whereas it looked as though Brandon was potentially running maybe slightly higher downforce, but on the low downforce config. So he doesn't quite have the same level of grip, potentially. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, though.
Look at him carrying the safety car to get going. I want to start racing. This is going to be an interesting restart. We'll see what he decides to do for strategy.
Yeah, but he needs to be careful because the cars behind him all running high downforce, like at least the immediate ones. So Vitautus and Dominic both running high downforce. The next one who isn't, Victor Barris. So let's see when he goes, and immediately just on the exit, that's just like that, he is gone. He is letting everyone know, I'm coming out of this corner and we are going green. And that is exactly what has happened. So he's now going to have to be careful because Victor Barris is now looking around the outside of Dominic Herbert, and we're going to see potentially if Dominic Herbert has any answer to Victor Barris here in that low downforce setup. Is Victor Barris going to be brave enough? Is he going to be close enough into Eau Rouge and Radion to maybe make a move? I think he's just staying out of the draft, so he's not in a position like that. But even still, going down now, going down the Camel Straight, look at that closing speed from Victor Barris. He's able to just get past and make it look easy. And then James Millett behind him as well. James Millett's going to do the exact same thing, and Dominic Herbert's going to lose 2 positions in the space of 1 straight because of just how much pace difference there are between that high downforce and low downforce package. But this is where we're going to see Dominic Herbert start to fight back in that higher downforce configuration. Going into Bruxelles here, is he going to try and make the move on James Millett? It doesn't look like he does, so good start from Victor Barris and James Millett doing exactly what they needed to do and getting ahead of these people who haven't pit yet, so their strategy going forward isn't disturbed. And just like that, Dominic Herbert has managed to catch up through Speaker's Corner. Is he going to look through the inside of Pouon? Doesn't look like he is, and he's just going to sit back for now, which is going to allow him maybe to take the inside line here on James Millett, and he doesn't do it just yet, but look at who's behind him. Julie Redmond, we were talking before. Julie is definitely trying to push as hard as she can to make any move possible. And round the outside, Dominic Herbert goes, which will turn to the inside of the corner. And if James isn't careful, he's going to get gobbled by Julie Redmond as well. So Julie is trying to make any sort of push back to James that she can. And she's really trying to put that Lumos e-Motorsports car under pressure. The CUDA team definitely want to try and do that. We know the rivalry between the two of them. And yeah, it's looking looking like it's just going to continue to be this way the entire race. James Miller, with that low downforce package, can build out a gap to Julie and maybe make that move back onto Dominic Herbert and then maybe start running away again. But Dominic doing an amazing job at defending, trying to give James almost nowhere to go. But James does manage to make it through, and Julie trying to use an opportunistic move to maybe get up the inside of Dominic Herbert as well on the exit, but so far nothing doing. Tico Kriegsman now has joined the fight and potentially going to look to the inside of Julie Redmond, definitely showing his nose there, not making any moves just yet. And I think this is where now we're going to look at a few other people who have potentially shuffled around the order, and Dominic Herbert's probably actually causing a bit more chaos here for the people behind him because he's kind of out of position a little bit.
Yeah, his pace just isn't there, but I think Miller had to pull that move off into the bus stop because now Herbert and Julie Redmond both have high downforce. They're going to be battling with each other, and Miller needs to make up that gap to Barris, who's already past Vitautas. He needs to start closing that gap again if he wants to start thinking about that podium position, but he has pitted, so he is safe for podium at the moment as Frederick tries to send it around the inside of Potts, and Potts just says, "No, sir, not today." Closes the door on him, sends him back behind.
I think there was a little bit of contact between them as well. I think I saw just a little bit of contact. I mean, it was very close racing between Frederick and Jake. But yeah, I mean, Jake doing an amazing job at defending, made sure that he was able to keep any sort of pace. And then this is where I'm interested to see, what is this setup from Frederick Larson, and is it going to work through Puon? Does he have more grip than the car ahead of him? And it looks like he might do. So potentially he's found this sort of quote-unquote medium downforce setup, and he's trying to make that car work as much as it can. And I'll be interested to see how much time does he lose on the straights. Like, is he still able to keep up with Slipstream, or is he still going to have the same problem that the high downforce guys have?
I think that's the answer we're all looking for, but good for Potts finally getting past Larson, he's been stuck behind this whole race, just not able to make a move. Hopefully he's able to stay ahead of Larson, who's, like you said, is running kind of that medium downforce setup. And as they're going into the bus stop chicane is Frederick Larson. I don't think he's close enough to make a move, but he does have the downforce to make that send, but he thinks better of it.
Also, Dominic Herbert has now just pitted as well. So Dominic has pitted, which means the only people yet to pit in this race, we're looking at Vitautas and we're looking at Brandon Walker. Victor Barris is in your net lead of the race because of that. Obviously, the car in front does need to pit, and there is far too little of a gap there for Brandon to get out ahead of Victor Barris thanks to the safety car. So I imagine we will see Brandon Walker drop maybe even to the midfield, maybe even lower if Dominic Herbert's position is anything to look at. Dominic Herbert, by the way, comes out of the pit lane. He's currently in 17th place, so he lost a lot of time in comparison to everyone else.
That's rough as we see Larson battling, and Potts just able to gain that gap down the straights. Larson's just, that medium downforce setup just did nothing against Jimenez. At low downforce, ironically for the F3s, the low downforce seems to be the way to go as opposed to the F2. Oh, as we see Larson go on the inside of Jimenez, he's not making it easy for him. Does he box him out? He does. He closes that door, not giving him any quarter. This is perfect for Potts. This is exactly what he needs to open up this gap. Frederick Larson's, as we saw yesterday, just the ultimate defender. He does not give anyone any quarter, and he's able to just hold these phenomenal drivers behind. I mean, Larson's defensive skills are just second to none in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one that I've been keeping my eye on every single race weekend. Is I always look for where is Larson, because I swear wherever you see Larson, there's probably like a car ahead of him and a car behind him almost always. He seems to be able to just find like spaces where he can attack someone and also show us what he's got in defending all at the same time the entire weekend. And what's surprising me is Larson's sort of approach to setting up his car to maybe run this high downforce package but as low wing as he can get away with. is working out really well in his favor, because if you look at where he is now, he's not losing that much time in the straights to the guys ahead of him, and yet he's still able to keep up at that pace through Puon that these high downforce guys have. And who's that? That was Vitautas there on the outside, spinning it, unfortunately, so he's dropped a few positions, which now means Victor Barris and James Malaire are now back into P2 and P3, and again, when Brandon Walker pits, they will be promoted into P1 and P2 respectively, as there seems to be contact there between Frederick Larson and Jake Potts. And is there anyone else that's been collected? We can't really see from the camera angle, but it looks like everyone else came out okay from that. It doesn't look like there was any other contact. Maybe Antonio Jimenez had a little bit of an incident, but we might have to go back and check. But that's going to mean that Jake Potts is now going back to the pit lane, and unfortunately, with the tow, there's not going to be that much sort of room for him to get back out there again. I think that means that Jake Potts, unfortunately, has lost out on a potential P5, maybe even a P4 from himself. And what that means is now Julie Redman has been promoted a few more positions. She's gained 3 off the start. Darius behind her has gained 11, and Arturo has managed to gain 12. But again, Arturo still does need to pit, so I'm sure we will see Arturo drop a bit further down the order, which may promote people like Danny O'Keefe, Cabe as well. But just as I say that, it seems to be Arturo dropping down the field a bit after being overtaken by Tico, and now O'Keefe, and then Cabe as well. So I'm not sure what Arturo is maybe struggling with his car, but it doesn't look like he's able to keep it on the track as well. So potential he's going to drop down the order compared to everyone else around him. But let's get back on board with this battle between Julie Redman and Antonio Jimenez. Julie's doing an amazing job right now, trying to just attack everyone ahead of her. And again, Antonio Jimenez, right now, you're probably looking in your mirror if you're Antonio and going, that's a CUDA car. I don't think I've seen a CUDA car around me for a long time. Like, I'm not used to guys like the CUDA cars being around here. I don't know how Julie's going to be trying to attack me, so I'm just going to throw everything I can at it and just see what works and what doesn't. Because Julie right now is doing an amazing job for herself to get further up the field. Yes, it may not be for P3 or P4 or, you know, the upper ends of the podium, but she's doing an amazing job regardless, starting from P9 and battling with leaders of the championship who normally you would look at Julie and be like, okay, P6, P7, P8, P9, right? That's sort of where we expect, but she's looking to go even further than that and show us, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna compete for the P5s. I'm gonna compete for the P4s, maybe even your podiums on pace alone and not through just strategy.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier during qualifying. Walker still, as Walker just gets passed by Barris, but Walker and Julie, they just have that race pace. Their qualifying pace isn't really quite there, but during the races, they're just as aggressive as DriveX or Lumos are, and they are able to bring it to him as Barris just isn't able to shake Walker just yet. Walker's able to stick in there, but they are running the high downforce setup here, and this is where they need to...
No, both of them are running low downforce, actually. Victor and Brandon both running low downforce. So your top 3 all running low downforce, and then Frederick, the only one that seems to be different so far, opting for that weird sort of middle ground that we need. I'm gonna ask him after this race, regardless of where he finishes, you know, what was that? Because this is Frederick's approach to setting up the car. Interesting, definitely. But in comparison to like Julie Redman, like we can see, for example, this is a prime example here of what we were talking about. Frederick Larson's rear wing in comparison to the other two, look at how flat Antonio's is in comparison to where Julie's was, and we'll see it if a camera angle switch happens. We'll see that massive difference. You see how much like more angled Julie's wing is. So yeah, she's got more drag, which means she's going to be slower in the straights as she's trying to follow as closely as she can, trying to absolutely get them all up in his gearbox. But again, that low downforce, you see, even with the slipstream, just pulling away is easily near enough. And it's one thing to pull away, it's going to be another to break that toe, and especially through the higher downforce sections of the track, that's where Antonio Jimenez is going to have to really try his best to maybe even catch up to the back of Frederick Larson, and if he can do that, he then gets that slipstream, so in the straights he's going to be even quicker than he already is.
Exactly, and with the higher downforce, it's going to be more of a slipstream, more air displaced. But it's very interesting to see both of the CUDA cars running different setups. Walker opting for a lower, possibly the lowest downforce setup, and Julie Redmond opting for that high downforce setup. Very interesting to see where they're finished, but Julie Redmond's just struggling down these straights, but she's able to stick with them in sector 2 and beginning of sector 3, but we'll see if she's able to make up that gap. As look at that gigantic gap that they have developed, as Jimenez is starting to look at Larson, who's just been running his own race after his collision with Potts.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying, is that gap between Jimenez and Larson, if that decreased enough to where Jimenez starts getting the slipstream, you're now looking at, from Julie Redmond's point of view, of now this is even worse for her, because she's now going to have to not only be quicker through this sector, but she needs to also keep close enough to Jimenez to be able to get that slipstream and almost use him as a tow to catch up to the back of Frederick. And if she can do that, who knows, we may have a three-way fight here for 4th position, which will end up turning into the last podium position, by the way, as well, when Brandon finally pits.
Absolutely, it's going to be really interesting to see. But Larson's just still keeping up that gap. It looks like he's just able to pull away in Sector 2 as he has that hybrid setup. And look at Julie just right back. Compared to where she was on the straight, she's just right back on the tail of Jimenez, who's just not able to shake her. He just needs to have faith that his setup will just pull him away, as Julie seems to be closing up the gap, and she's looking on the inside, but she just won't be able to get that run that she needs. I mean, you can be as fast as you want in the corners, but if you can't get past them by the end of that corner or through the next straight, it doesn't really matter if you're not able to capitalize on the difference in setup. You really need to choose your overtaking position crucially. I would say if you're able to, either at the end of the Kimmel Straight or halfway through Sector 2 at Brussels. That's where I would say the high downforce setup cars need to pass the low downforce, because then, as we heard from Chris Byram yesterday, that's where you're able to open up that gap through the rest of the corners before the 2 straights. You're able to open up maybe a 1 second gap. You'll be able to just clear them. But if they're still able to come back at you on the straights and fight you, then you're just losing time doing that. But Julie Redmond's just trying to stay in that slip. She's doing a phenomenal job about it. Not really harrying Jimenez, just kind of getting him to worry about her. But I can tell that she just wants to get at Larson. As Jimenez just passes Larson right there on the straight. Julie's looking around the outside. She won't be able to.
Yeah, this is where now, if you're Larson, you're looking at the fact that the car ahead of you is running that lower downforce setup, so you're going to be quicker than him with that hybrid setup, and Frederick Larson is now going to show us what it's like to use that hybrid setup that may not be as quick as Julie through the corners, but is still quicker than Antonio. And again, we saw it in the straight line speed that he had. That Frederick Larson had with Antonio, as Julie Redmond looks to the inside and maybe trying to make the move through Pouon, but doesn't commit all the way. I think she could have maybe made that stick, but maybe just backed out of it partway through, or Frederick just found some grip around the outside. And I think this is one thing that Julie has to consider, is the car in front of her, yes, is lower downforce, but it's still not as low as Antonio Jimenez is. So we saw it from Frederick Larson just then, going through these last couple of corners. Look at how close Frederick managed to get to the back of Antonio Jimenez. So this is now the closest these three have been on track, and look at the difference in straight line speed. Julie's almost being left for dead behind these two as they just continue to battle even through these corners. And this is where Frederick's setup is actually paying him a lot of just good overtaking opportunities, because he's able to get really, really close to these low downforce guys, but not also lose as much to these low downforce guys, these high downforce guys either. So from him, he's not losing time in slipstream on the low downforce guys, but then through the corners he's still able to catch up to them anyway, so he's able to keep that gap all the way through the entire course of the lap. And I think potentially this might be what a few people potentially look at going forward in other low downforce circuits or mixed downforce circuits like we're seeing here at Spa.
Yeah, but he's just a master of none right now. I mean, you can be somewhat fast in the corners and then somewhat fast on the straights, but I believe that having one or the other is the play. As we can see, Jimenez just streaking away from Larson, and Julie's looking on the inside. Is she going to be able to get that run? It looks like she does. She's sending it on the inside, and Larson just doesn't have an answer for her.
So,
just doesn't have that downforce to battle with Julie. But I think with that mixed setup, it's just enough to let Julie get a slipstream and not be left for dead on the ultimate low downforce setup that we see the Lumos and the DriveX guys doing. And Julie's just able to really easily stick it on the inside of Larson and then just start pulling away. And we both know that in Puan, Larson's not going to have an answer for all the downforce that Julie's running. But like I said earlier, Julie Redmond, that race pace is just phenomenal. She's taking it straight to the top drivers. Even though she qualified 9th, she's up there. I don't believe she's pitted, though. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
no, she has.
Oh,
So she pit on lap 5 as
locks
Jimenez
up.
had an incident. I'm not sure what that was from Jimenez, but Jimenez had an incident there that forced him around and potentially now that's promoted Julie into P3. However, look at where they are on track. Depending on how close Jimenez can get here, it might not be the move done yet. Julie, you still need to keep one eye on those mirrors, my friend, as she's now going to start looking for Jimenez to maybe make a move around the outside, possibly to the inside. And there it is, we're looking to the inside, and is that Frederick Larson trying to make it maybe 3 wide as Jimenez tries to look round the inside of the bus stop and does make that move stick just about. And that, I think, is where we see the driver difference come in, where the downforce peels off and it is just man and machine. And I think that is where we see Antonio Jimenez manages to get the most out of his brakes in comparison to Julie, and he's able to really be confident that his car's going to stick. And now I think we'll see him start to run away, but then again, he still has to worry about Julie. Even though he knows he's going to run away on the straight, he still has to be careful that Julie doesn't come back at him through the middle sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we see that was ultimate confidence on the brake, almost going 3 wide with Julie on the inside, and then Jimenez just throws it on the outside with all of that low downforce. That was an impressive move from Jimenez, and he's showing why he's leading the championship right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, high downforce setup starting to work in Julie's favor. Look at how much closer she's managing to get to Antonio. And again, this is one of those things that we keep coming back to. If she can get this move done before Puon, or like before the second part of Puon at least, get the run out of Puon, she may be finally able to get past and stick that and keep in 3rd place. But every single time she gets close enough, she ends up having to deal with that straight line speed that Antonio has, where she just can't do anything about it. She has to sort of just sit there and just wait for any sort of mistake and pressure Antonio into a mistake. And we know these DriveX guys aren't going to crack under pressure that easily.
No, but they're cracking right now. As we saw last lap, Jimenez, I believe, went wide and just got a bad run out. But as he does it again on the outside, Julie Redmond is making Jimenez scared. He is pushing to the absolute limit. And Larson, unfortunately, just doesn't have any room to make a move. Like I was saying earlier, I don't think that mixed downforce is the way to go. I mean, you can be good everywhere, but if you're not a master of one area, to make those gains on the drivers that have made that commitment, then you're just not going to be anywhere. As Larson does kind of look on the outside, but just doesn't have the run to do anything about it. But Julie Redmond just still sticking on the back of Jimenez. This is the fight. This is the fight for 3rd place. Malaire and Barris just kind of having a Sunday drive out there. 6 seconds back from Barris. Malaire almost another 6 seconds back to Jimenez. I mean, they seem to have that locked out as long as they don't make a mistake. But this battle for P3 is heating up, and neither driver is giving any quarter to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Antonio Jimenez is just going to keep trying to push as hard as he can, because he knows that if he can get 3rd here, the championship fight is still very much going to be close. It will go into the favor of James Malaire, but it will still be close. And what that means is that he needs this position right now. He probably needs it more than Julie does. If we're being honest, for the championship fight and where people are right now, Antonio needs this 3rd place. He needs to hold off from Julie Redmond, and he needs to make any sort of move that he can to end up ahead of Julie. Regardless of what that is, he needs to find something through this middle sector to make sure that that gap extends further than what Julie's able to come back from into this middle sector. Because if he can do that, and he's able to extend that gap through the final part of the lap, then maybe Julie drops out of DRS range. Sorry, not DRS range, but sorry, slipstream range. And if Julie slips out of slipstream range, that's where Antonio will start to finally get ahead. And that's where we'll start to see Antonio start to breathe a bit more life into that car. But Julie, again, doing an incredible job at keeping the pressure close. Regardless on what Antonio seems to be doing, Julie seems to be answering back regardless. And yeah, the gap isn't as close as it probably was a few laps ago. So we're going to see Antonio's start to run away but into the bus stop. Every single time we've seen the bus stop, Julie seems to be so much better at getting a good exit there that it almost doesn't matter. But we need to be careful here. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Even into that, as you say, flip-flop chicane, she's just riding the tail of Jimenez. She's just able to gain so much time. So this straight line speed is just kind of irrelevant if you just can't keep it up in the corners. And this is just the battle of the weekend. Low downforce versus high downforce. As we can see, Larson with the kind of hybrid downforce, not really able to make any moves, just kind of running his own race, sticking in to the slipstream. But yeah, back to the championship battle with Potts out of the mix and Barris taking that lead. That's a huge points deficit for Potts. That was such an unfortunate accident. I mean, DriveX is once again just going to start running away with it as Potts is almost 6 laps down at this point. That's so sad. But Miller gaining a good haul of points, still holding up that Lumos second place in the constructors. I believe James Miller is 5th in the drivers championship, 5th or 6th. He's going to gain a good haul of points. He's going to start closing that gap on Larson, who he is behind right now. But this battle for third place, Jimenez is just starting to run away, just starting to set his precedent, show everybody how good of a driver he is now that he doesn't have Julie pressuring him every single turn. But that's bad news for Julie as she's falling out of that slipstream range. Jimenez is just going to run away from her.
But again, we see it so many times that regardless on how far Julie's back at the end of the Kemmel, she seems to be able to just give all of that back before they get to Blanchimont. So again, regardless on that gap, wherever it is at the end of Kemmel, seems to just be immediately ruined by Julie's high downforce setup. So, and look at the gap. It's already back down to 2/10. It is absolutely crazy how Julie's able to just remove basically a 1-second deficit in the first sector and just go, okay, cool, I'll do that in the second sector instead. And we're going to be close as heck going down the back straight here before the bus stop. And if we can stay closer still, then maybe Julie is going to cause an upset here. We only have 2 more laps to go. Sorry, 3 laps left to go as Barris has just come across the line to start lap number 20. So 3 laps to go for these drivers. And if Julie can't make a move here quickly, I think she's not going to be able to do it, but she does indeed just set a new personal best lap of a 2:11.8, so that's 2/10 quicker than what Jimenez managed to do on that last lap, and most of that, guess where it came from? The middle sector. And it is crazy to see that sort of difference, that sort of pace difference, is able to just be demolished and eaten up by the high downforce guys. But again, that difference comes from just, yeah, we're quicker in a straight line, so we can maybe make moves easier into sectors 1 and into the bus stop, but through sector 2, it's so difficult to pass, but you almost need to have that confidence that, yeah, my cars can stick, my car can do it, I just need to absolutely commit to making that move, and I need to make it very obvious that that is what I'm doing.
Yeah, we've seen Julie, she has that confidence. She's able just to throw it in right on the tail of Jimenez. But I just don't know if he's going to let her have an opening to do anything about it. I mean, shoving her to the outside is the move, but she's able to hang it around the outside. But he's just closing the door, and closing the door, and just trying to gain that gap back as much on the straights as possible. But Julie, like you said, through the second sector, just able to gain almost a second back from the deficit that she had on the straight. I mean, she may just be biding her time and waiting for that last turn because we know that she won't be able to stay ahead of him. But if she is able, on the last lap, she is able to pass him and then keep him behind with defensive maneuvers, she can easily take third place back.
Yeah, but I think, you know, we're now going on to lap 21 here for these drivers, and I think Julie's starting to run out of time. So she's going to have to really keep as close as she can through this first sector and not let it get to that 1 second gap that it has been getting to. She needs to get even closer than that if she can, and find out any sort of last pace that she has in sectors 1 and in sectors 3, through the bus stop, through turn 1. She needs everything she can, and she needs it right now, because this is the time, as both drivers just go green, 211.7 from Jimenez, but 211.5 from Julie Redmond. That's 1/10 off what Victor Barris is able to do. She is currently one of the fastest drivers on the circuit right now. Julie Redmond is showing us that she's got the pace to maybe even win races here in the future.
That's what I was saying earlier. Don't count out these CUDA guys. They're qualifying. They need to work on the hot lapping, but their race pace, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, to think that Julie can bring it to possibly one of the better F3 drivers that we have in the league right now is just a testament to the potential of Julie and Brandon Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to note as well, by the way, I didn't mention it before, but Tico Kriegsmann is now out of the race. He was in around about P7 or P8, I believe, but had an unfortunate spin, and that's him now out of the race, which promoted Brandon Walker, Julie's teammate, up into 7th. So Brandon getting a nice position gain from that. And again, Brandon didn't seem to lose that much time from pitting very late on in comparison to everyone else. I think a lot of people have ended up pitting sort of around lap 13, lap 15 as well, so out of the safety car cycle. But yeah, there seems to now be a few people DNFing, so Kriegsmann was on lap 18, so we apologize for not catching that. As I say, this battle has been so close that unfortunately we haven't really been able to focus on anything else. It's just been all Julie and Antonio right now, and again, Julie, I think she may have made a mistake here through the second sector, or because she's now a lot further back than we may have seen her in previous laps. Either that or Jimenez has finally found some sort of extra power from that car, or some sort of extra grip from that car. Maybe it's just pressing the accelerator down a bit harder than usual, as we are going on to the final lap here for the race. And Julie Redmond, 1.2 seconds, 1.5 going into the bus stop, and she's coming into the pits. Why is she coming into the pits for? Did she not have enough fuel?
She must have underfueled. Must have underfueled. That's the only thing that I can think of, because she can't be losing grip on those tires. I mean, it's not that hot out there. She must have underfueled. What a disaster for Julie. Just didn't get the fuel calculations right and just lost a 4th place position. What a shame for Julie Redmond.
Yeah, but it's going to be a relatively quick stop, 4.35 seconds, so I imagine that would have been just for fuel, maybe even a little bit of tires as well. But she does come out now, and that is, her teammate is ahead of her. So Brandon Walker is now in P6, but Julie has ended up stopping twice here. Not the result she would have wanted, I imagine, to go from battling for P3 and unfortunately just not having enough fuel, and now pushing ourselves down there into P7 and dropping a couple positions. Yes, she still gained, so she can't be too disappointed, right? You know, you still gained off where you gridded, but it's not necessarily the result that she was looking for. However, one thing I do want to point out, Nicholas Marshall, by the way, gaining 11 positions through the course of this race. If he can continue that, I mean, that's a great result for him. I mean, you know, if he can continue that pace, I don't think he's got anyone to worry about. So he just needs to bring it home. And speaking of bringing it home, and I think actually Nicholas may have gained another position off Vitaltis pitting, so that could have attributed to where he's now in P11. And yeah, I don't think there's anyone close enough. But regardless, this is your final lap of the race, and Victor Barris, untroubled really for most of this race, is going to be bringing it home through the bus stop chicane for the final time. He is going to come home to win the Belgium Grand Prix here for the Formula 3 round number 8. Victor Barris takes the win for DriveX Esports. Very, very happy in that cockpit, you can tell. And James Millett will come home to finish P2 for the Lumos E Motorsports guys. Great drive from him. And then Antonio Jimenez bringing it home in P3 after an incredible battle with Julie Redmond there. And then Larson, an amazing job from him to finally bring it home in P4 with his teammate there in P5. So the Orion Racing guys doing an incredible job to get P5 and P4 in the teams championship, as we see Frederick Larson doing a bit of donuts as well. Brandon Walker and Julie Redmond P6 and P7, not the result that Julie was looking for. Dominic Herbert coming home in P8 with Patrick Olsen P9, John Rowland in P10. Nicholas Marshall coming home. He will finish P11 to be our hard charger, gaining 11 positions through the course of the race. I mean, that's a pretty amazing result for Nick. If we're talking about driver of the race, I mean, Julie Redmond's got to be a contender, right? From how she was driving.
Yeah, absolutely. I would put my money on either Julie Redmond or Nicholas Marshall, or even James Miller. I mean, I was not expecting James Miller to pull out a P2 there, but his qualifying pace and his race pace, he was just able to keep it up. But I think Julie Redmond made a statement today. I think she looked at the position that she was given and that she earned, and she was said, not today. I'm going to take it all the way, and just harried Jimenez that whole time. I still believe that if she had enough fuel, she would have been able to put more pressure on him throughout the final lap, but Jimenez was opening up that gap. But regardless, I think Julie Redmond should be incredibly proud of the work that she's put in today.
Yeah, absolutely. But that will be it for the race here, as I believe Frankie now does just come across the line to finish out this race. And this very eventful Spa race. It was absolutely incredible to witness and to watch along with you, Weston. But let's take a look at the final results as it stands. That's your qualifying results, not the race results. Let's look at the race results. I was wondering why that seems so very close between the DriveX guys, but here we are with the race results. Victor Barris does take your win. Very, very comfortable win from him, followed off by James Miller and then Antonio Jimenez to round out your podium. Then Frederick Larson and Danny O'Keefe, 4th and 5th for the Orion Racing team. So amazing result for those guys, especially for the teams championship. And then Brendan Walker and Julie Redmond for the Cuda Works team, bringing home 6th and 7th. Dominic Herbert taking home P8 for Pure Racing Opposition, followed off by Patrick Olsen and John Rowland with P9 and P10 with that High Gear Racing team, and then the Blue Frog Racing team as well. Nicholas Marshall, P11, again, amazing drive from him. Arturo in P12 for the other Blue Frog Racing car. Vitautas there in P13 with Cabe in P14 and Frankie rounding out P15. And I believe anyone else who finished lower than that was unfortunately finishing a few laps down. So Sean Roberts, Jackson Carr, Tico Kriegsman, Emmanuel, Darius, Jake Potts, and Stuart Gibbons, unfortunately, all having incidents that meant they couldn't finish the race. But we want to try and get in a couple people for interviews here, and one that we can definitely talk to right now is our man of the hour, James Millett. So, Weston, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a couple questions for him. Very dominant drive. James, congratulations on the 2nd position, man. Amazing racing.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel after that P2? That seemed like a pretty easy, dominant drive from you. After that restart, were you worried at all? Were you just remaining calm? Were you looking at the drivers around? What are your thoughts?
I was worried before the restart. I had a little contact on lap 3 going around, I believe it was Tellez, on Kennel Straight there. And from then on, I was a little shook. I didn't know if I had damage or not. Mentally, I just wasn't driving well. Tieco was closing the gap, saw me a little bit. Safety car came at just the right time. We knew we could pit and make it to the end. And really, that gave me new life. I felt pretty fine after that. Had one more scare behind Herbert there. I think he was running a little more downforce, and so in the middle sectors he was right up on me with less fuel, and we that one gave me a little bit of worry coming down to the final chicane a couple times. But from then on, no, it was pretty much just keep it on the road. I wasn't trying to push. Just save the tires, try to keep it straight and upright, and was hitting consistent lap times, and realized the battle that was going on behind was keeping anybody from being a worry. So it was good. It was good once it went good. Sometimes it takes some luck. Unlike the first 2 races of the year where I got none, I had some good fortunes today. So it feels nice to come out on the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, congratulations on that P2. We saw a lot of variation between high downforce and low downforce throughout the whole field, but it seemed like the low downforce, at least for the F3s, were pretty dominant today. Like you said, you had that scare behind Herbert, who had a little more downforce, but I think you pulled out a fantastic P2 today. But Julie Redman and Antonio Jimenez battling behind you, she was just able to hold up Jimenez that whole time for probably about like 8 laps and was able to hold them up so you could get that P2. But were you worried on the restart at all? I noticed that everybody seemed to pit on the safety car restart, and you seemed to be getting a good run down there. What were your thoughts during that safety car restart?
Well, I had I think it was Barris, right? I had Barris in front of me, so
Hmm.
that's comforting. As one, I knew I was going to have the draft as long as I could keep close enough for a minute. Two, there's a lot of faith and trust in a driver like that to handle his business and nothing funny happening. So it kind of helped stretch us out a little bit. I think we the first 4 or 5 of us jumped away from the rest of the group pretty much immediately, and I was a little surprised seeing that right around the last corner of the chicane, they were gone. That caught me by surprise a little bit, but luckily I have a itchy finger and was able to get on the throttle. But it was fine. Like I said, I know Barris knew the same thing I did. We had both pit, and all 3 cars in front of us hadn't. They were probably on a little less fuel, and we're going to be a little tougher. It was really just biding your time. I probably shouldn't have mixed it up as much with Herbert as I did. Even, it's just when you're running that low a downforce and you're on a straightaway, it's really run out of options of places to go. You need a little bit of patience, but yeah, it pretty much that the pit stop, the pit strategy, when that safety car came out, we. It pretty much secured everything as long as I did my part and just had a good drive from there.
Yeah, well, James, amazing haul of points for you today. Very dominant drive. Any shout outs that you want to give out?
Of course, the boys in the booth, all the dudes in the garage back at Lumos. Jake helped get me where I was today. We had a good car, good setup, a lot of work put in, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, and shout out to Mr. Barris. Miles ahead of the rest of the field. So another dominant performance from him. So congrats.
Congratulations, James. Amazing P2 today.
All right, bud. Thank you.
Oh, my voice is still dead apparently, but we're going to bring in Victor Barris here as well and just get some thoughts from him and seeing whether or not sort of what his thoughts were for the entire race, as it seemed like he was a bit untroubled for most of it.
Mm-hmm. Barris, what a win, mate. Congratulations.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you. It's been a while since the last one.
Yeah, absolutely. But what a dominant drive from you today on that low downforce setup. You did an amazing job out there. What were your thoughts coming out of that start? I saw that you were getting a little bit of a draft from your teammate ahead to try and keep Malaire behind. And that low downforce setup just seemed to run the field today. All the high downforce people were pretty struggling. So what were your thoughts on the start?
Well, the start actually was quite equal with Antonio, but it's true that in the first corner I ran just a little bit wide, and James was in a
Hmm.
position to tag me. And well, yes, Antonio saw it and gave me a draft that saved me absolutely. So yeah, that was a key moment for sure. I was telling him through the radio, not going to pass you, mate, in this first lap. Don't worry. But yeah, James was very fast, I think very aggressive in the early laps. So well, that was dodging a bullet for me. Yeah, then in the second lap, I got a nice draft. I felt very comfortable and took the lead. Fortunately, something happened behind, I guess.
Mhm.
And from then on, just after the safety car, trying to save the tires, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, behind you, Jimenez and James had a little bit of contact as James was trying to make an overtake, and that just put Antonio a little bit off of the pace. But he managed to save it and still came out, I believe, P6 or P7, fighting with Julie Redmond. So that was a great recovery from her. But around that safety car, right as you were starting to open up that gap, that safety car came out. How demoralizing was that? Or were you just calm and thinking, oh, this is a perfect time for me to pit. This is exactly what I wanted. What were your thoughts on that safety car and the restart?
Well, actually, the safety car was not the ideal thing for me because I had a strategy to pit a little bit earlier than a full tank strategy. So I knew that I had to stop, so I didn't have the same mistake as in Monza. But I was very worried about the tire performance by the end of the race. So I was a little bit nervous, and I tried to to save the tires as much as I could. And I think that the track conditions went to my side. I think it was a cooler session that in the practice and qualifying maybe.
Hmm.
So the tires kept well till the end.
Yeah, well, once again, phenomenal drive, Barris. You absolutely earned that win. Is there anybody that you would like to shout out?
First of all, Tony, of course, my teammate. He was very important for the first lap. If not for him, probably I would have been behind Muller. And he made a tremendous recovery. So kudos to him. And we are going to have a nice battle for the rest of the season for sure. Super fast and well, more more often than not, he's been much faster than me. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, not today, sir. You were the fastest out there today, and that was a good haul of points to close up that drivers' championship. Once again, congratulations, Barris. What a fantastic drive today. Good on you.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers, everyone.
See ya.
And next up, we are going to hear from Antonio Jimenez, who is already joining us in the booth. So, Weston, I'll let you take this one as well.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, Antonio, where do we even start? What an eventful race for you.
Oof.
Oh my lord. So what happened between you and Malaire? I believe it was lap 2 when he was attempting to pass. Was that just a little bit of contact or did you catch grass? What happened there?
I think it was a netcode hit. I know
Yeah.
it well, but he uh, he he hit me by the side, and I
Mhm.
watching the replay, but we don't touch. Me and he don't touch anywhere. Then it's a netcode clearly. Clearly.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
what I seem to have noticed too. I mean, you guys are battling tooth and nail, and unfortunately that would have kept going if that little net code had not happened. But
Yes.
we have to talk about that battle between you and Julie. What a back and forth that was. She was just on your tail the whole time. You just had to go defensive.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the high downforce versus the low downforce? As we could see, she was gaining on you through the corners, but you were just able to open up that gap. Were you feeling pressure from her? Did you know that your setup would prevail in the end? What are your thoughts on those differences?
My biggest danger is the tires. I
Mm.
overhate them too much. We
Mm.
have very options in the week, but with the low downforce and the middle downforce. But when I'm normally use the middle, but the times are very best on the low force. Then literally I melt the tires, because I slate a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Then
absolutely.
with Julie, in the middle part of the circuit with the turns with the corners, he she got, he goes too fast, and I'm in- I'm trying to not overcook my tires. Then I
Mm.
need to conserve the tires for the long race. With 11 laps, I can go, but 17 laps thing that was with the safety car, my tires are without any tires.
So she was just pushing you, and it just melted your tires as you were just trying to keep her behind. So she was putting you under pressure.
Yes,
But
was an intense lap.
abs- yeah, absolutely. But absolutely phenomenal P3. I believe you are still ahead in the championship. Don't quote me on that, but this was a very good haul of points for DriveX, only extending that constructors championship even further.
With Victor without any any problems, it's very complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. But is there anybody that you would like to shout out? Anything you would like to thank?
Uh, well, I will thank you all and continue with the next race.
Yeah, well, absolutely phenomenal job, Jimenez. What an amazing race. You really
Thank
had one
you,
of the most eventful races out there.
thank
Great
you,
drive
Weston.
today.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Well, Alyssa, that was one of the most exciting races that we've had. Spa is proving to be an absolutely eventful track. Not that anyone doubted it, but holy crap, this weekend has been chock full of action.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, this league continues to get better every single week. The new people coming in, some of the older people just starting to get a bit quicker and starting to really push their names back into where they probably should be. You know, some people are having a bit of a slow start to the season, like for example, James said in the interviews, starting to now come back in and really start providing that sort of pressure on these top guys like these DriveX guys. And it's making everything be just so close up and down the grid. I just hope it can continue. Obviously, once again, we do have the F1 later on. It is coming up in about 15 minutes or so, so we need to we need to quickly sign this one off and head on over to those guys. And once again, we're going to give a massive shout out to Majors Garage, TD Designs, all of our sponsors involved, Butt Kicker as well, for providing just some amazing stuff for all these drivers to get involved with. And again, if you want to get yourself involved, if you enjoy what you see here, just make sure you follow along with us at iFormulaLeague.com, as well as get involved with the YouTube as well. Let us know in the comments just what you're thinking of this league and the racing that we're providing this season, because it is absolutely crazy. I can guarantee it now, you're not going to find anywhere better on the iRacing platform to race with us, to just race in general in Formula cars, because this right here this is where we need to be right now. Like, we are the best, hands down.
We are the best. But I would also like to thank you for being in the booth, providing that voice to the iFormula League every single week. You're doing a phenomenal job, and we can't wait to hear more from you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to be here every single week if you guys want me here. So as long as everyone's enjoying it and everyone's happy and, you know, we're providing the best content we can be, then I'm going to be here in the booth every single week. And hopefully the drivers provide me just amazing content to cast. And again, thank you, Weston, for joining me in the booth as well. I know Spa's one of your favorite tracks, so amazing to be able to commentate on it. So yeah, it's incredible stuff, and definitely one that we very much enjoy being a part of. It's just an incredible league, and we can't wait to see you all, not next week, but the week after, where we head off to Watkins Glen, which should be a very interesting circuit. I imagine we may see a similar sort of thing that we see at Spa, with a couple of people playing around with downforce setups, maybe not to the same level of extremity as we saw here, but potentially we could look at seeing people running maybe like a mid downforce or potentially a high downforce setup and playing around with that idea and just seeing what can happen with it, especially considering the fact that while the straights aren't necessarily long, they open up quite a bit, and there's probably going to be quite a few corners that are going to be flat out for these Formula 3 and Formula 2 cars, and then especially in the F1 as well. But again, once again, Weston, thank you for joining me in the booth, and again, thanks to everyone here from the iFormula League, and that will be it from us this week. And again, we can't wait to see you back here once again for Watkins Glen for round number 9. And we're getting close towards the end of the season. There's only going to be 5 more rounds left after that one, so hopefully this championship fight continues as close as it is. But for now, we'll see you all next time.